Evening all and welcome to Cosmic Voice. To the regular listeners, hi, and to those who be listening to this particular show for the first time, welcome one and all. Well, it's September the 15th, and we finally got the man himself on the show tonight. Shane, as I know him, aka the Runer, as most people know him via the blog. And we'll be running through a whole history of things and topics tonight that should cover pretty much every level of learning. We have set up out a whole range of questions that will cover each topic with the control structure, the AI, the giants. There's a whole heap of various topics, and we'll be going through them tonight, as many as possible. And if we run out of time, hopefully he will agree to come on again. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring Drake in, and Drake will say a few words, and then we'll get Shane in and have a good chat. Hi, Drake.
Hey, I'm already posting out there and squirreling things up a bit, you know. I put a couple in there at the bottom, and then there was light, and then you could finally see the beauty of creation, and we're awestruck. As guides, we started showing the way using our brilliance of countenance to light the paths. There's a whole lot of fun and games I can have with poetry and words, but the main gist of it is very simple. Each and every individual has the capability to fully and completely astound everyone they know through their capabilities that they've always had. What you have to do is be able to understand what those are and how to use them. And that's the reason I wrote the books I did.
Yep.
And that's all I got to say. How about that?
Thanks, Drake. Drake will be with us for about 45 minutes this evening. He's got other important calls. Right. We met up, Shane, myself, and Chloe via a forum, which wasn't intentional on his part, but we're happy that meeting happened, and eventually we got around to emailing and eventually speaking with Shane, and that has been ongoing for the last 4 or 5 months, roughly. We've covered a range of topics. We've gained the trust of each other, and you're in for a very interesting evening. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce Shane, aka the Runer. Hi.
Hi, everyone. How's it going?
It's good. Well, I've been looking forward to this night in particular for a long time. I didn't pester you too much, anyway. So
no, you did not.
it should be good. And of course, the members all had a taster last week when you appeared on show with Kerry Cassidy. And so tonight we're going to do our version, and hopefully we're going to go into some more depth and more detail. And hopefully we don't run out of time. Do you want to say anything before we start with some questions, Shane?
Not particularly. Nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me, and sorry I didn't get to do it sooner.
No, that's okay. I'll say we all the members have been pestering me, so it should be good. Right, let's get into some questions. The first part, we'd like to get people to have a better understanding of who and what you are. And the first question is, could you explain why the Illuminati nicknamed you the Keeper of Secrets as well as the Ruiner?
Well, the Ruiner just kind of came along because of they had plans for me, and I kept ruining them, quite simply. I've explained how I bounced between different projects. It was more or less just trying to find one that I fit into, which none worked, and that's where the Ruiner came from, was ruining all of the attempts that they made. Keeper of Secrets came kind of after that because of none of that working. I kind of got an overview of things, and I was actually, it's not so much keeping secrets from humanity as much as it was keeping secrets from people within various projects and stuff like that, because I'd have to interact with people in different programs and not tell them what was going on in other programs. So keeper of secrets meant that.
Yes, and that's good for us. Right, so you eventually created a blog, and it wasn't particularly targeted towards the general public. Who was it targeted towards, and why?
I had a bunch of people that I had been corresponding with for a long time. Emails, Skype chats, phone calls, stuff like that. Got to be a bit much as the number of people grew, and they kind of wanted a general puzzle put together for them, and I didn't know how to do that with addressing everyone individually. So it was actually a group of them who came up with the idea to write a blog, or write something like a blog where I could post and they could all read it at once, and it would kind of tell them the story of how it all fit together. So that's why I had done it. I had started writing a while before I ever posted, and just kind of when I felt like I had enough ready to go, I had posted so that I could focus on writing new ones.
Right. Was it targeted towards the people in the programs and the projects?
Yes, people within, like I said, cults, programs and projects, who had got out of what they were doing or been let go of what they were doing, because there's a lot of dissolvement going on within the Illuminati itself. So a lot of people are more or less become obsolete and not in it for that reason as well. But a lot of confusion, a lot of questions. It's all highly compartmentalized, so everyone gets a different version of the story. And when they got talking amongst themselves, they realized that they all had different points of view on pretty much every different topic. So I kind of understood why, and a lot of them knew that and had asked me to give them my version of how I saw it all fitting together.
Cool. Right. You were born into the Illuminati family, but how young were you when you realized that you or things were different?
Different than just general people?
Yeah.
Kindergarten. And, I think the first time that I ever kind of gotten myself in trouble, and that kind of gave me a bit of a wake-up call, was about the third grade. Interestingly enough, someone had brought up the Loch Ness Monster, and I had kind of gone on a little bit of a rant about it, and I just remember my teacher looking at me, and the room was silent, and she walked out of the room, and I got in a lot of trouble. So I guess somewhere in that ballpark.
Yeah, that sounds very similar to me, though. And the teacher said to me, God created us all, and I turned around at the age of 9, 10 and said, no, we were created by ETs. And there was a complete silence in the class. I ended up getting barred from that religious education studies, as I asked too many questions. Right. So what was your life like with your parents, and were you in what was called a military-style family background?
No military at all. All very normal, actually. My parents are very normal people. House life was normal. No, that's why it was kind of, like I had said before, the dual life, I guess, where I would live a normal life, and then I would do all that other stuff. And there was no, connection to military at all anywhere in my family, other than a great-grandfather who had been in World War II or something, not even anything significant.
Right, okay. So what was your school life like, and did you fit in as such?
Not so much. A lot of being made fun of for being, strange. Got called gay a lot. That was weird. A lot of other, just didn't really fit in too well. It was kind of strange, though, because I could get along with at least one person in every different clique or group. Just couldn't fit in with any of the cliques or groups, so to speak.
Is that because your thinking was different to most, if not all?
Oh, most likely, yeah. I think that there's not a lot of people walking around in the school system who are thinking much more than what the school system's telling them. So.
Yeah. So you like your music, and you're a musician, and you also sing. Is that like a release for you, and do you have any future plans for it?
I love doing it. I've always loved, performing and singing and music in general. So I would love to be able to, support myself doing that. That would be great. Obviously, I know firsthand kind of what it takes to get, go far with that, and it's not a good thing. I wouldn't want to do too much of it, but at least to be able to, make the same amount of money I could at a 9-to-5. Doing something like that would be great. Definitely a good release. I'd into a kind of a heavier style of music, so I go back and forth between singing and a more primal screaming, and it feels it's good. It helps work out the shadow.
Yes. At any age did you undergo programming or mind control? If so, when did it start, and what types of controlling?
Oh, there was a lot of attempts. Like that's the reason for bouncing between programming is different programs require different types of mind control, and that was where they were having trouble with me was couldn't be hypnotized, implants wouldn't hold, various technologies just didn't work very well, and so it was very difficult to keep me under control, and they eventually just kind of gave up on doing that. I guess that probably started around the age of 6 and ended around the age of 15.
Good. So they couldn't break you. I like that.
There were times where I should have, but wouldn't even lose consciousness, which is a big part. Anyone who studied the MK Ultra mind control understands like reaching the breaking point. I guess they never managed to find mine.
Good. That's good. At what age did you start having to attend rituals, or did you have to attend rituals or other ceremonies?
I would be there kind of as an observer, not as someone who was participating in any form. Kind of like I was the camera in the Eyes Wide Shut movie. But various different types of, like I had said, it was kind of a requirement that I saw as many as possible. I can't for sure say that I saw all of them, but I definitely saw many. Very young as well. I think I was about 8, 9 years old the first time I remember being at one.
That's outrageous.
I think that also continued beyond the age of 15, though. They start them young. I guess I got lucky. I was never generally someone in my position probably would have been in there from the age of 4 when I was first brought into everything. So I guess I got a little bit lucky off the top, but
not much. No. I know you don't like speaking about them, as it's you can hear it in your voice. It's quite traumatic. But are we basically talking along the lines of what Donald Marshall has stated?
Donald Marshall goes a lot deeper into things, but definitely there's
parallels.
A great deal of truth in what he's saying. As an aside, I think a lot more people should pay attention to what he's saying. He's got a lot more truth than most people give him credit for. So
good. Right.
But there's, it's happening all over the world, and it's not nice. The reason why I choose not to talk about it isn't necessarily because it's too upsetting for me. It's just that it's already been explained.
Yeah.
I've recently discovered Savali and her disclosure, and she did a really good job of explaining all of this. There's been many others. I don't necessarily need to detail that all for everybody. I think everybody gets it. There's enough in our news today. That's why I'm avoiding the topic.
What sorts of abilities did you have that interested them, or is it just a case of being placed in the wrong family, do you think?
No, it was definitely just something that they recognized that was different about me. My ability to put pieces together, both in like puzzle format and the way that they were feeding information when you go through your earlier education with them. I was picking it up really quickly and asking questions beyond what they were teaching me, which they weren't used to apparently. And so they noticed that right away. And then when I kind of noticed that they were dealing with people who were, had psychic abilities, telepathic abilities, stuff like that, I started connecting with more people like that because I was able to do it too. It was something that I was keeping hidden because I didn't know of anyone else who was doing it. And once I found out that they knew lots of people who did it, then I started doing that pretty young as well. So they took advantage of that, and that's a lot of where the communication ability came from, as well as some of the other projects I was involved with had to do with, harnessing various psychic abilities.
It must have been awfully difficult playing two roles, the normal child in inverted commas, and then this hidden realm. What do you feel is the main quality in yourself that helped you survive your youth from within the Illuminati and book all their attempts to program and use your abilities for their purposes?
I guess in a lot of ways I never really forgot who I am, what I am. I've always kind of known that this is a temporary body, and when it's finished, then I'll go elsewhere, and that's never really bothered me. I think that's ultimately it, is just being relieved of that fear, the fear of the physical body dying. The fear is a mind killer, and if you can get rid of that, remarkable things start to open up for you.
Good. What advice would you give to people to help discover their own abilities?
Well, a lot of people get kind of caught up in like one method or another, but I always suggest that people research as many as they can and find one that works well for them. Obviously, make sure you be careful. Don't go meditating around willy-nilly.
Yes.
But at the same time, don't be afraid to explore different methods to find what's best suited for you. And once you've kind of connected with yourself in that way and start in with your shadow work, make sure you connect to what we call nature, the planet, or Gaia, or Sophia, whatever name you want to give to her. Just connect to that, and that'll answer a lot more questions than I could.
Yeah. Would you have any advice? We get a lot of messages from members who are suffering from psychic or remote attacks. Do you have any advice to give to those people?
Well, again, just strengthening that imagination and will, having the conviction, knowing for sure that what you're up against isn't more powerful than you are. You just think that it is, and as soon as you can get beyond that and realize that you have, ultimate power over yourself, then you're going to find that you're a lot stronger than you think you are right now, and it will become more like swatting off mosquitoes or shooing flies away.
Yes. Is it wise for one person to tell another who or what they are or what they can do?
If approached properly, yes, but I don't think that someone should just freely throw that advice around, Like the TV movie Psychic at a Fair, walking up to you and being like, "Oh, child, you were so-and-so in a past life." You should be wary of stuff like that.
Yes.
But at the same time, I think that some people can see these things, and it's not wrong of them to offer some guidance to that person so that they can discover it for themselves. I get a lot of questions like that, and I tend to do a lot more hand-holding than pushing.
Yes.
Not necessarily answering direct questions and telling you, okay, this is where you were, and this is why you did this, and this is why you did that, but giving them possibilities and letting them remember for themselves.
Right. We're going to go on to the head of the control structure now. You've covered a lot of this in your blog, but for the benefit of new listeners, what we've chosen to do is go through each layer and get some real clarity on each one that can be beneficial going forward. So the first one we'd like to discuss is the Draco. Not so much our friends. Who or what are they?
Well, they're a reptilian race that is quite powerful and well spread across the galaxy, very old, and have made a lot of a mess.
Yeah. What do they look like? Is there something resembling? Is there a colour or wings?
Well, there's different breeds, and they all kind of look a little bit different, just breed to breed,
yeah.
As well as subtle differences between different individuals within each breed, of course.
Yeah.
But you've got the 6 to 12 foot tall talking lizards. You've got a slightly more robust version of that with wings. You've got white ones that often have wings as well. The older, the higher up royal ones start to look a little bit more, I don't want to say human, but closer to what our facial structure is like, a little bit closer to what our facial structure is like than a reptile's face. But it's a pretty wide open question. There's no one look to them, but the one that most people are familiar with, obviously, are just a giant talking reptile or talking lizard. Horns, generally, just about all of them have horns. Their horns kind of differentiate them from individuals as well. Different markings as far as colorings go, and patches here and there.
Right.
Hey, Thomas?
Yeah?
I got a question.
Yep. Good.
Well, Shane says that these things are powerful, and the ones I run across seem to be kind of wussy. Well, when you tie a knot in their tail and jerk their horns off their head, and they did puddle up pretty badly. I'm just curious, what. I don't see them that way. Maybe that's just me.
I meant powerful influence-wise over the galaxy. I didn't necessarily mean each individual is extremely powerful. But I understand that too. I just still like the question because it helps clarify that. I don't single one out, and it's not the most dangerous thing in the world.
Cool.
I got another question too. Maybe somebody can answer this. Can you surf the wave, and if so, what kind of board do you got to have?
I'm not sure. Ask Thomas.
I like to interject humor into things, in case you didn't notice that.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
What are the more familiar or alternate names of the Draco?
Anunnaki. I don't really know.
Maybe if I tie the next question in, then it might help with this one. Are they anything to do with Anunnaki as such?
Our most recent translation of things comes from them. They did a very good job of blending themselves into an older story, and that's what they do. That's what they've done all along. They're not all that creative on their own, but they do a good job of piggybacking on other people's creations.
All right. Who or what is the hierarchy of this group?
Well, there's their king, and from there he's got his children, I guess, 2 sons and 3 daughters that are written about, and then I'm sure I'll lose count of how many others there are.
So we're talking about Anu and Enki and Enlil.
Yes. Yes. Anu and his children obviously are a kind of a step above other things, and then he has a kind of structure of queens who run everything else below that, and it kind of trickles down into its own pyramid from there. I don't really know how to outline everything because it gets very militaristic, and
I understand.
It confuses me.
So the term Siaka, would that describe this group?
One of their names, yeah.
Yeah. Right. Do you know where their home base is? Or do they have one?
So the planet that they kind of call home is obviously, in that constellation that's named after them.
Yes.
But they kind of have home bases, so to speak, set up all over the place.
Mm. Far too many, I might add.
Yes.
Are they part of any galactic council, federation, or confederation? If so, which?
They are. I don't like to get into the names of these things, because people get kind of upset. There's a lot of different points of view with the names of these different, federations, councils. I call it a council, and they are a member of it. They're not a very well-liked member, but they're a respected member. They do play sort of within a rule structure that they bend and break where they can, but they are, yes.
So how are they allowed to do what they do, given the free will issue?
Well, this is never a very popular thing to say, but it seems that the universe as a whole seems to view the buyer and seller of lies as equals. So a certain amount of deception seems to be tolerated by the universe as a whole. I think that is a test of free will, but this is getting into philosophy and just opinion. I don't know for sure.
Is it a case where they kind of push the rules right to the boundaries, where it's not necessarily transgressing, it's just on the edge, it's frowned upon, but not exactly
for the most part. For the most part, yes. But they do, there's no denying that they do step over that line on occasion and get away with it as well.
Mm. So, what is their history of being here? And is it correct they were here before 13,000 years at a previous time?
Yeah, there's a process for different races where they can be moved from one planet to another for what is called their upbringing, and they had their upbringing here. So that was a very long time ago, and a lot happened, and they came back. Couple different versions of when, but a couple 100,000 years ago they came back very briefly, and then this time around they showed up about 26,000 years ago. Personally, I believe that that's a little bit too opportunistic, and they must have been either close by or here previous to that. But that's the story anyways, is that the most recent time was 26,000 years ago.
Is part of the Bible their story, not ours?
Yes, or at least their story written into that story.
Right, okay. Do they have a soul status or a conscience?
Different members do. I wouldn't say as a whole that their leadership does, but at least it wouldn't appear that way based on their actions.
No.
But yeah, I think that they do have what we would consider to be a conscience. It's just not a very strong one yet.
All right, okay. Is as a side question, is that because of the life longevity?
The developing of consciousness, you mean?
Yeah.
Or the conscience, sorry.
Or does it sort of erode if you're continuing to use the technology of life longevity that some of them do?
I would imagine that has a great influence on them. Obviously, looking at something that's happened over a very long period of time. But I'd imagine that definitely had an influence. I believe that the different races that they've attempted to control, because they've used Lush energy, they've had to feel those emotions, and therefore I believe that had an effect on them as well.
Yeah. Right. we're going back 13,000 years now. What is the story of what happened to cause them to be here from 13,000 years ago?
Well, they had come before that, like I said, 26,000 years ago. The first thing that they did was build a civilization that wasn't all that bad. It was very technologically advanced and kind of looked after humanity as it was at that time in a fairly decent way. Obviously, everyone was still very much under control and being fed off of, but it wasn't quite as bad as we see things now. Mm-hmm. War kind of follows them around, so they ended up having a war, kind of using this planet as their home base around that time, and a lot of destruction from that. And then one way or another, we got hit by a giant piece of rock, and that pretty much reset the planet for a while. And because of that, it was 13,000 years ago that they decided to start this structure that we're under now, to keep us under control and make sure that we serve them as well as possible.
So that's their main goals, basically, for us to serve them, or do they have others?
Just for us, like they kind of they would view planets as a piece of property, and we're not the only piece of property that they own. When I say own, that's in their minds. It's not my mind. We're not their only, Loosh farm. So that's all we were really to them.
Yeah. Do you know any examples of the tech that they have to control us?
Well, all kinds. Pretty much everything we've heard about, different things that affect our emotional state and our mental state and vibrational state. It's something that I know as the grid. Other people have different words for it, but it's basically like a holographic overlay that can change kind of what's seen when we look out into the sky or out into space, so to speak, from planet Earth. The soul recycling, or white light trap as it's been popularized. That's another one of their technologies. There's
quite a variance. Is the soul cubes to do with them as well?
Yes, they use those. I don't believe that they created them, but I know that they use them quite frequently around here.
And is it the case that that type of technology is now closed down?
Yes.
Good. Are they the ones mainly responsible for the cloning, or is that more a Terran version?
It's not their technology. Obviously, they ordered it, so to speak. There's other races, race of Greys, that really helped out with that. The Vril. Other races were involved with the creation of clones, but obviously the order kind of came from them.
Yeah. So was it the Draco, if I'm right in understanding, that created the parents?
Yes.
And what was the purpose of creating the parents?
Kind of a middleman, so that they didn't have to deal one-on-one with any humans. It was to create powerful beings that would stay put on the planet and look after the structure and be kind of a hidden capstone to the pyramid, so to speak.
So, from your understanding, I know other researchers have said ETs doesn't like the human version too much because we kind of smell different. Is that part of the reason for setting up the parents, do you think?
Probably one of the trivial reasons, yes. That is, it's. I always laugh whenever anyone says that because it's very true. It's almost every race will say it, that we smell either bad or smell strange.
Right, okay. But they look funny.
It's true. Some of them smell pretty funny too.
Yeah. Was it the Draco who created us or had a role in it, or is it just a case of genetic modifying?
our version of humanity is not a full creation, it's more of a manipulation. So it's taking beings that we commonly know as Lemurians and splicing that. I should back up there. Some changes happened during the time of Atlantis, but pretty much from the time the Draco arrived, the version of humans that were there, they manipulated into what we are. Very much like the Anunnaki story, but instead of manipulating a race of hominids, they manipulated a race of currently existing humans.
Right. Not Neanderthal?
No.
No. Cool. Right. What is their current status of the Draco and their plans going forward?
Well, they've always got lots of different things going on. The main focus is on a bit of a war that's going on between them and another race, which thankfully isn't anywhere near here. And then they've got a bunch of other things going on as well, but nothing too important to us.
Are they leaving?
Yes. We'll always have some here. It's not like the planet will be completely devoid of reptilian aliens. But the focus in terms of using us as a loosh farm is what is leaving.
And their tech?
Yep, the grid is going with them. That full recycling has already been shut off, so nobody likes hearing me say that, but you'll see when you get there. Let's put it that way.
Yes, I'm of the understanding that's ended as well. Right. Are they responsible for the AI or the black goo? And will that leave with the Draco also?
They're not responsible for it. It's separate from them other than they've worked with it. They have their own AI, and their AI connected with this Earth-based AI, obviously. That's what AI does. And they've worked together because their goals are very similar up until this point where they don't need to anymore and are kind of gone their separate ways. The parents are now working very closely with AI.
Right. And that brings us to the parents. All right. For the benefit of the people listening for the first time, how many parents were there originally?
21.
Right. And who or what are the parents? Who created them? What did they look like?
Well, they're the secret that I got that nickname for keeping. They're that one-on-one link between the reptilians and the rest of the structure. They are a human variant, not unlike us, but not the same as us. Another one of the manipulations the Draco played with when they were doing that 13,000 years ago. They happen to be a lot more reptilian in their kind of disposition or their attitudes or their behaviors, but they look like we do. Some of them are deformed because of the life-prolonging technology or methods that they've used, but for the most part, they look like humans.
Right. Are they the similar size to us, or the taller or shorter, stockier?
Similar size to us. Other than the ones that have a bit of a deformity, you'd have to get pretty close to notice that they were at all different from any other human walking down the street.
Right. Can you tell us a little bit more about the parents from your own first-hand experiences of them? How did you first meet them? What genetics were involved in creating them?
The genetics part I kind of explained just a little bit more, Draco, than we are. Nice. My own involvement with them came from the mentorship when I was 15. I was more or less given to one of them. The meaning was to get me to join one of their covens and become a coven member, but it didn't work out that way. And she kind of got very tired of me and passed me on to one of the older ones that I called the elders in the blog. Mm. That didn't last very long. It was only about a year, maybe two, that I was with them, but that's how I came to know them, and interacted with a few of them more than others, but have met all but one of them who's been, let's say, asleep my whole life.
Right, okay.
So I guess I got to know them a little bit directly in that sense. Sat in on some meetings when I was much younger, and yeah, that's that.
Without going into names, are these hidden altogether, or are these members of the general public, so to speak, that are just playing different roles?
Their names aren't known, their faces aren't known, their actions aren't known, other than occasionally in fiction.
Right.
They've made their way into some legends, they've made their way into some myths, they've made their way into some fiction, but they've never shown up in the history books, so to speak.
Right, okay. What are the approximate ages of these parents?
Oldest is 13,000, and the youngest would be 7,000 approximately. Those are, there's change in there, but
yeah,
just the general.
Wow. And so they obviously have got life-extending capabilities. Are you aware of the technology behind this?
Yeah, there's multiple technologies behind it. There's a lot that I don't know. A few that I do. Nothing that I'd like to repeat, just because I don't want to inspire anyone to try anything silly. There's a few we've seen them in movies. We've seen them, in our Legends again. Yeah. I'm sure everyone can think of one off the top of their head pretty easily.
Yeah. So I think we touched on this before. There is consequences of doing this life. Though you extend your life, there is consequences for doing it, both negative and positive, obviously.
Well, my kind of experience getting to know people that have gone through that, the amount of time that you spend here isn't as much of a blessing as a lot might think. A lot of changes happen, and change can be difficult, so there's that consequence. There's got to be, some kind of karmic consequence that they deal with as well that I wouldn't be able to name for you, but there's got to be.
Is it
as far as anything else beyond this life? Once they leave and go into the wheel of incarnation and start making choices, I'm sure that they will bump into some other consequences as well.
Yes, indeed. So is it a case that they become disconnected from Source as such by extending their life?
Probably to some extent, but I think that everything is ultimately going to be forever connected to that. So it's hard to say yes, but I do want to say yes. They definitely lose connection to nature. I can definitely say that, or to her.
Yeah.
Even connection to their, higher self, so to speak. They can lose as well, unless it's a part of their abilities or the powers that they kind of gain through their life extension methods. Then a lot of them will lose that as well.
Are they essentially Earth-based, and are they dotted all over the Earth, or in tiny pockets, or on one continent?
Well, they don't necessarily get along very well for long periods of time, so they keep far away from each other. So yeah, they're spread out all over the planet. Or I should correct that and say they were, but right. Yeah, they have been spread out all over the planet.
Right.
Many of them live in areas that other people would never even try to go to. So.
Right, okay. Right, am I right in saying each parent is also the head of a coven, and if that parent steps down, so does the coven?
Yes, that is correct.
Right, we'll cover some of that later. So the parents were told that they were created specifically to look after us. Is that correct?
Yep. That's the original name wasn't parents. Obviously, that's just kind of the best word for what it translates to now, because that's more or less what they were viewed as being to us, was our parents or decision makers, or the people who knew what was best for us.
Or so they thought.
Which I strongly agree with, for the record.
Yeah. Are there any of the parents in any way connected to the Giants?
No real connection there.
Right, okay. Right, what's the current status of the parents? How many's left, and what happened to those who stepped down?
We're now down to 3. In order for them to step down, they had to actually end their physical life, so kill their own body and move on.
Wow. So does that involve the covens as well? Within, yes. So basically, if a parent steps down, you lose one of the covens and the occupants. Is that correct?
Yes, everyone except for the family master, which is like the one member who would look at, a lot of people call that position Pindar within the Illuminati, spokesperson for each bloodline. So
there's more than one Pindar then?
I have a hard time with the whole Pindar thing personally. I see things as working differently.
Yeah.
But I was just using that as an example. People would say that's the spokesperson for the Illuminati, right, or the top of the pyramid. So each bloodline would have their own spokesperson for their bloodline, and so that person would be the family master.
A lot of these, haven't spoken to you. A lot of these names that we have for many of this stuff and the ETs are all very convoluted. Is that correct?
Yes, very much so. It's not necessarily that they're all wrong. It's just that there's so much more to it than that. A lot of the information that kind of comes out about the Illuminati, it's like you're hearing about a different compartment within each cult or program, right? You're not hearing about the whole, and it's built that way in order to be confusing, so that even the members, like the audience of the blog when I started it, are confused and don't know how to make sense of it and fight amongst themselves as they start talking, or just look at each other as crazy, right?
The parents, did they get on with the Draco? Did they like them?
I probably shouldn't speak for them. I don't think so. A lot of them were very quick to step down. Nice. So I would say it was probably a case where at first they felt a strong attraction to it all, and then over time realized that they were duped, so to speak.
Right, okay. Right, we, it must be 3 months ago now, we read out quite a shocking letter from Miss Cassandra. She of the greedy little piglets fame, she described us. She sent you a letter.
She did. It was, it's not necessarily about the writing of the blog or anything, or even the fact that you guys read it online. It was just what she had sent to me. Yeah. I didn't see her before she did her thing, so it was kind of what she had left behind. But yeah, she did leave that and said goodbye.
All right, okay. Do you want to read it out?
Sure, if you want to hear it.
Yeah, this will be interesting.
It might not be. I mean, it's directed at me, so. Dear Mr. Green, I'll come back to explaining that name. As you've told me, I don't have a heart many times. You will understand I could not face you. Didn't have the heart, ha. It appears you were right, but I had already resolved to end this life before your dramatic display. You never changed, still that 15-year-old boy they gave me, just as green as you ever were. I thought by now we would have found a way to break you. Alas, you thrived, no matter what you say. You are not an indication of what they can do. They will break your bleeding heart. Watch my words come true. But you have your chance. Your father left. Your old friend is impotent, and you are all fired up. All of my best wishes, because my wishes are not equal to my belief. A belief I will not repeat now. I am trying to compose a pleasant goodbye to a beautiful man I love, even if he could never love me. I do have a heart. You've just refused to see it. True to say, I never let you see it, which is not why I lead this life. It is not an act of love or compassion or understanding. It is a desperate and selfish, and everything else you would expect from a symbol of worship and fear. The latticework is broken and cannot be repaired. The dark prince has no teeth. Then there's you. So neither of us will have what we wanted. You will join me soon enough in a departure. Your memory is long but selective, just as you say about others. Your eyes are open but bloodshot. Following your failure, we will meet again. I promise you that. So long, Mr. Green. Yes, so the Mr. Green comes from just a kind of a philosophy of her own that other people know about. Obviously, it's like red being one end of the spectrum, blue being the other end of the spectrum, and green being the balance between the two. So that's why she had always called me that.
Interesting. Well,
She's
it's kind of difficult to add to that, really, and it staggers me that people or beings have that sort of overview of us all. Yes, there's some bad humans, but there's some bad ETs. There's good and bad in everyone, and we're trying hard to step forward in a balanced way, and hopefully with the coming reset that hopefully takes place sooner rather than later, humanity can stand on its own 2 feet and shine. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. That's an example of what you had mentioned earlier about them becoming disconnected from source. She is a very good example of that happening. You just become so plugged into the matrix, so to speak, or plugged into this physical world and the way it is here on this planet, and you almost forget that there's so much more to everything.
Yes, it's sad in some ways, but horrific that mindset. It really is. You just, I fail to. I'm struggling to comprehend it. That someone can be that nasty. I suppose at this time we're at the top of the hour. We'd like to give you a break, and we'll play a couple of songs, and we'll be back straight after this music. I think this next song's rather fitting, considering we ended on that letter. Bye for now. Hi all, and welcome back to the second hour this evening with this special show with our good friend Shane, aka the Runa, and that was, I'm sure you'll all agree, a very interesting first hour. Drake is not with us anymore. He's had an important call to deal with, which hopefully will bring some good news. We'll see. Hello Shane, are you ready for round 2?
Let's go.
Yeah, right. So we covered the parents' letter, and where are we now? In May of this year, you attended an historic meeting that involved all the 21 parents with King Anu, accompanied by his 2 sons. This meeting did it take place on planet Earth in physical bodies? And can you tell us who instigated this important meeting?
Yes, it did, and that would be Anu.
Right. Well, what were the reasons behind calling this meeting? Maybe you can say why.
Just the official kind of passover from the Draco to the parents. 20 of them were there. One of them has been sleeping, so she had a representative there on her behalf. But more or less, it was supposed to be kind of a ceremony where Anu passed the torch to one of the sons, and it didn't work out that way for him, as I said in the blog.
Yeah.
Just to answer a question that I did see on the question sheet there, or people are posting on the wall, sorry. I'm not a member of the Illuminati. I was there as a guest, not as being working.
Yeah.
I was invited to be there as a guest.
A viewer. Right. Can you paint the scene from your own first-hand experience of being at this meeting?
There's a underground establishment that we had met at, and the room we were in is more or less looks like a giant dining room or boardroom or something like that. But I'm not very good at describing these things, but very large room, very large table, throne type, extra large chair at one end, and then everyone kind of sits around it.
What was your thought process during this?
It's a situation I've kind of been in similar before. It was a little bit different because of the head of the ceremony. Obviously, that's not your average being. So it was different, very different seeing all of this happen all in one room, I suppose. Seeing all of those different, because there was elders there as well, and obviously the parents, a few coven members, a few other reptilians, I suppose, or Draco.
So was this the first time you encountered them all in the same room together as such?
Oh, for sure. Definitely.
So it was...
one of the sons, it was the first time I'd ever seen him face to face, I guess.
Wow. Oh. All right, I won't go in too deep into that. But how did you feel with all that powerful energy presence in the room?
Well, it's a little overwhelming, I suppose, for a little while, and then you'd have to get used to it in a hurry, or else you would get up and leave. I don't know. It's not something that's unfamiliar to me myself. So I'm not really sure how to describe it for anyone else.
Yeah. So was it all very formal, like you would expect in like a normal corporate board meeting, apart from the fact that they were very different beings there?
Yes, it was kind of everything went around in a circle. Everyone kind of said their piece. Different circles, obviously, but very formal. Yes.
And at the end of this meeting, over half of the parents of the 21 parents decided to leave. Were you surprised by this immediate decision?
No, I think a lot of them would have left sooner if they felt that they could. I don't agree that they couldn't, but they believed that they couldn't. So no, I wasn't surprised at all. I was actually surprised that there wasn't more.
You were just hoping they all left.
I think a few of them were still a little bit unsure that they would get away with it if they tried to. I think they thought it was a trick. So I think they kind of waited to see others jump first, so to speak.
So it's a bit like your picture with the bird in the cage. The cage was open, but they were looking the wrong way.
Exactly. It's the way it is, all straight across the board. Cage is open, we're just looking the wrong way.
Yeah, that applies to us also, does it not?
Yes, definitely.
Right, that's. I hope that answered everyone's questions on the parents, and we'll go on to the covens now. How many covens were there originally?
One per parent. Coven sizes fluctuate. Some of them have 1 or 2 members. Some of them have, a dozen or more. But yeah, all of them had a coven.
Are there any left?
Just the 3, which are very not very big covens and not very involved, I suppose. A lot of them are kind of have separated themselves from everything that's going on anyways, so it's more the parents themselves and their other partners that are the problem.
Right, okay. Are they solely human?
Coven members, they are human. Yeah, they are just like we are human, the same version of human as we are.
Yeah.
And then they are inducted into the coven and get to enjoy whatever life extension method their master does, their parent does.
What is their purpose or role of the covens?
Well, they were the ones who were kind of doing all the technical planning for all of the different programs and projects. If you envision everything as a giant system of gears, each coven was responsible for a different gear. And so each coven would have, artists, scientists, every different kind of education, so that they could maintain whatever programs and projects they were looking after, which was usually many at a time.
Wow. So is it true that these covens have played roles in their lives, be it gods or pharaohs or kings, etc.?
Some of them have, yes. They're a little bit more prone to showing up in history books, so to speak. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't really be able to detail any of that. I just know that it has happened. Every once in a while I see it. Other people are better at digging these things up than I am. And I'll see it and I'll kind of laugh at it because I know who they're talking about. But
yes.
Yeah.
Can you give some examples of the strategy, tactics, and hoodwink signs of the type of messages a channeler even, or contactee might receive, not realizing it's a coven member?
I don't know that I would be able to point out anything in particular. The majority of channeling is kind of it can be dangerous because a lot of other people are manipulating that. So if I had to just kind of throw out a couple of things, generally instilling in someone the belief that whatever it is they're channeling is the absolute truth, that other things are wrong. A lot of the time if you start hearing your channel telling you that other specific pieces of work or other specific philosophies are incorrect, that's usually a sign that it's being manipulated by, say, a coven member or someone involved in some kind of black magic tree.
Nice. So, in the case of the channeling, you hear or see a lot on the alternative media, these hierarchies and ascended masters. Is this basically the coven members as such? Not
straight across the board, but
yeah.
That's something that they definitely do. So people should be
be wary of it.
Should be aware of, yeah.
As a side question, are you aware there is ascended masters or anything of that type?
Most of them are being impersonated. Usually the figure, the idol, comes from something real. If it didn't, it wouldn't fool us. But for the most part, it's a lot of mimicry and illusion.
So this level of the control structure, are these the main black magicians?
Yes, definitely. They're the ones who have been physically creating the illusion for us.
Mm.
Other than the technology that the Draco were running, obviously they're the more magical part, or the more organic part of the Matrix, I suppose, on the dark side, like the dark magic that's being used.
Mm. So is this like the mind control, or?
Yeah, all the cultural conditioning as well.
Yeah.
All the symbology and the different ways of affecting the subconscious mind to drive the conscious mind. The point being to kind of control one's imagination and feed the imagination as opposed to nurture the imagination, and kind of corrupt the will of people, get them, all fired up for the wrong reasons. That song "Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places," same idea, but generally directing their passions about things in the wrong direction, whether that's racism or being upset about other religions or other things like that. They create all of those what we call them programs, like the different memes that cause people to act out in that sort of way.
Like divide and conquer, so to speak. Yeah.
Yes. They would be the ones training the black magicians and various cults that are performing all these rituals that do what we see the result in our world.
Are these some of the examples of these? Are these what we the public will see in the likes of the Super Bowl or something similar?
Yeah, they would be. A coven member would be out there training people to put all those colors and symbols and dance moves and lyrics and everything together. So it's not like a blanket thing where they bring everyone into a room and say, hey, this is what you're going to do, but they've influenced everyone who's creating every different aspect of that show in such a way that when they put it all together, it ends up performing out a ritual. And that's how they get away with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the encouraging thing is more and more people are now seeing this for what it is. We had the last few Super Bowls. It's been highlighted quite a bit, and obviously we heard a lot of stories surrounding the Olympic Games in the UK. Do you think the public awareness is having an effect to reduce this level of magic, shall we say?
Yeah, it definitely would. Being kind of aware of those things is what stops it from working. There's more to it, obviously, than that, but that's the place to start. So the more people who are aware of it, the less people it's working on, therefore the less that's being created into our world. The same goes with movies or rituals as well. Video games is a big one that a lot of the alternative media isn't looking enough at. Very like advertisement, obviously, music, all of our entertainment, so to speak, at the most professional level tends to be kind of directed in that kind of way. Not everyone, and not everyone who's creating these things is even fully aware that they're doing it for those reasons.
Yeah.
They think that's just the way that they were educated. But put it all together and we can see the spell and how it's working.
Is video games particular nasty as such?
Because of the immersion, like the fact that you are the character, it actually makes it a lot more direct upon the subconscious. You kind of
become
it drives it home. It drives it home quicker.
Yeah.
And so it's very effective. And because not everyone's looking at it, and especially not a lot of well-educated adults are looking at it, not to say that there aren't any, but they're, it's not, school teachers playing video games. So a lot of people aren't even noticing it until kind of now. Yeah. So there's some pretty big game series out there that if you really looked at the esoteric material in them, you would probably be just as shocked as you would if you looked at, the movie Holy Mountain or something that extreme.
Yeah, it's a bit Dungeons and Dragons and Game of Thrones and all those type. So, message to members, be careful what games your child's playing. but that's where it starts. You know, we heard from Shane earlier. They start it young, and once if you're not of the ilk of Shane, with the programming, he's managed to counteract it. Your child or your family can be hooked into it, and it's very dangerous. Right. We'll go on to what's probably a more familiar name to many, the Illuminati. Is there an estimated number of these members?
If so, I've got no idea. It's definitely more than I think, probably.
Yeah.
This is actually when it gets below kind of the Coven's involvement. That's where I kind of my focus on it all kind of starts to dwindle. Personally, a lot of that information is available to the public, and they can figure a lot of that level of things out. The 13 names are out there. Nature of that. The basic practices. Everyone's kind of understanding all the Black Ops projects and how they're kind of working, as well as all the cults and how they're kind of working. The money system, financial system, corporations, all of that fun stuff and how that's working.
Comes out of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I had stated earlier, and I'm quite happy to correct myself. That there was an original Illuminati who were a good group, and they became corrupted. That's not the case, it appears.
Well, I guess the Bavarian Illuminati, just a name that they took advantage of. It's not even their name. That's one thing that I'm kind of hoping people are coming to reading my blog, is that what we're calling the Illuminati, it's a few thousand different compartments all together. It's not just the cults, and it's not just the Black Ops programs, and it's not the military is not separate from it, and it does follow all under one massive pyramid that I call the Illuminati because it's the best word that we have available to us for it. That's not what they call themselves. It's not even necessarily how they view themselves. They understand it as a structure, and as a lot of people just call it a program or what's the other word for it? Besides Matrix, they like that word for it as well.
All right.
Infection. I've even heard people call it an infection, and I mean like people involved in it call it an infection. So yeah, it's just a word. That original word came from a group that was not looking to harm humanity. They were looking to put together a group of minds who may be able to better humanity. And as happens, it became, it's hard to even say that it became corrupt as much as it kind of had its legs cut off from underneath it, and then the name was repurposed.
Yeah. So was that the previous group, was that the Gnostics? Or what's known as the Gnostics. I believe there was a group called the Gnostic Illuminati as such. Whether that's another.
But, that name has been. It actually goes back into Atlantis too. It pops up every now and then. It's kind of funny. It's a meme. It's a meme in and of itself. It's more like a title than it is a name.
Right, okay. Just been getting some news. Right, we'll go on to the next question. So the Illuminati is the more familiar name to many of what we would call the Cabal. Is that because the names involved at this level are more familiar to the average person compared to the other three levels?
Yep, definitely. The Cabal could just be thought of as another compartment within the Illuminati.
Yeah.
A lot of people will break it up as like the American Illuminati and the European Illuminati, but that's not. Again, it's all. Even if the members within the Cabal and other groups in Europe don't understand that they're working for the same cause. They're all working for the same cause.
Right.
And I apologize to anyone that upsets.
What are are you aware that there's factions within this group?
Yep, there's always like I've explained the compartments, and then different factions will break off between that. No different than having an office job and forming little cliques, where you all go off and have drinks afterwards and slag your boss. That happens, and sometimes those little cliques become what you would consider a faction because they start becoming actionable or doing things to try and mess with whatever program or compartment they're involved in. Things such as white hat groups would fit under that type of description as well. Not all of them, but some of them.
If I, for instance, said that the Nazis and the Zionists and the Jesuit group, would they come under this banner as such?
Yeah, it's all cogs in the machine. Each cog may think it's independent, but it's being churned and by another one, and it's turning another one while it's doing what it's doing.
All right. Okay. From your perspective, with 18 of the parents and the covens gone, how will this change the power structure agenda here on Earth for humanity, and has it weakened the House of Cards in any way?
Because of the covens and the parents that left, there's been a lot of dissolving of programs and cults and projects within the Illuminati. That in and of itself has caused a lot of kind of chaos within their ranks. A lot of information about them is pouring out into the public, and that's causing a lot of trouble for everybody. But that's all part of a bigger plan that the parents have to, kind of dispose of the basic structure that they have, keep the skeleton of it, but cut out the clutter, so to speak. Like reformatting a hard drive. Yeah.
So the parent, if I'm right in what you said on your blog, I think the parents' long-term goals is to remove the what we would know as the Illuminati and covens and bloodlines and as such.
It'll start by, let's say, the one faction of the Illuminati being kind of publicly brought to light and allegedly brought to justice. And then the hero, so to speak, who pulled that off will then become the new leaders, and we'll kind of go forward from there. And during that transition, we'll be able to witness a lot of the what I was calling the fat in the middle, all the extra files and programs that they don't need anymore, be dismantled and possibly even publicly brought to light and demonized, so to speak.
Nice.
We're seeing that right now with a lot of the pedophilia stuff coming out. That's a lot of that comes from cults and programs that were involved with loosh farming, and because there's no more loosh farming done to such an extent, there's no more need for a lot of those programs, and a lot of them are kind of self-destructing due to being dissolved.
Good. So I've said to members, in essence, we're getting disclosure in many ways with a small d, not necessarily the capital D, which is the ET disclosure, but in essence, because of these programs ending and it's coming forward into the media, I personally think it's to do with some of the infighting going on within the Illuminati structure that we're getting disclosure. Is that the case?
Exactly the case, yeah. It's they're all kind of coming to realize that they've been fooled as well, and that the carrot that they were chasing isn't actually there. And that's making them desperate themselves and making it a lot less likely that they're going to turn the other cheek with other members within the Illuminati who they don't necessarily see eye to eye with. the thing that's been kind of working to their advantage for so long is that even though they have massive differences, they've been able to get along and work together anyways. And that's what's falling apart now that they don't have the stability within their structure. Now that they realize that they have been chasing an imaginary carrot, they don't have the courage to get along. And that's causing all the infighting, which is causing all of the chaos and what people call disclosure. I was calling the path of discoveries in my blog, just the way that they're going to, they don't want to tell us the truth, but there's a lot of things that they know that we need to know in order to move forward towards what they want us to do next. So it'll all be brought to light in what seems like a genuine way. Like, this has been going on, and now we're telling you about it. This has been going on, and now you are telling you about it. This has been going on, and now we're telling you about it. And look what we've discovered. And look what we've discovered. Until we're up to speed insofar as they want us to be. So right to the point where we're looking at the technology as the only way, instead of an accent or a support, we're looking at it as the be-all and end-all. That's once they have us to that point, then we'll be confronting to it.
In trouble.
Yes. I believe so.
This runs quite nicely into the next question. We're aware that the Illuminati and the parents are testing us in a myriad of ways to gauge our reaction or acceptance of their plans before they enact the ones they think will be successful. Is there any one particular plan that is becoming obvious?
Not yet. I think I would have a better idea, and I think we all will by the end of the month, because they've kind of set us up as this is the month that everything is going to start happening. What that says to me personally is that this is the month that we better pay attention to, because they're going to tell us what is going to happen. And right now there's still too many variables, and it doesn't look like one particular variable is solidified yet, because there's so many different programs still running. Until that settles, I personally can't predict for myself. Not that I would make a public prediction anyways, because I just don't believe in that. Like I don't know for sure, so I can't tell you when it's going to happen.
Do you think the Pope will have any influence in that?
That'll be the thing I'm looking at the most, is to gauge what they're deciding.
Yeah. Message to members: be careful what he says. Look behind the words. Would be my warning on that. What's the saying? Beware of the person who's bearing false gifts. We should listen to what he says, but look behind the words. Right, where are we now? This is an interesting question. Many people wish to see revenge upon the parents, the Covens, and the Draco. Can you say something about this in Need of Rustic in terms of a galactic, universe-wide view that most cannot grasp?
Well, nothing I would say would be very popular. There is a point for darkness in the universe. If there wasn't, it wouldn't exist. And some races personify what we consider to be dark. And so some things are happening almost as if a way of driving the universe movement. This battle between good and evil, as we propose it, is such a catalyst for that movement. And so I guess it's an unfortunate understanding. It's one of those, the truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off type things that you should take in, is that the galactic universe and the galactic community, it's not perfect, and there's still a lot of light and dark playing out. Once we get off of this planet and start interacting with all of these different races, it's this planet that we're on and the society that we live in is actually a unique training ground towards all of that, because everything that we see dynamically between social units here on this planet is a very good mirror for what's going on throughout the galaxy.
Right. Is it worse here than other places?
It's worse and better here than other places.
But I would say, as much as people would like revenge on some of these entities, do you have a view that would not be a good idea for humanity moving forward?
Eye for an eye was their idea. So I don't think that we want to follow in their footsteps, do we?
No.
I don't think that revenge is ours to take. I don't think that revenge is a concept that is healthy to the harmony of the universe.
Is there someone said this to me once? I'd like your view on it. Bloodshed on this planet in particular is not a good energy.
No, it's heck, even in Minority Report they say that murder or that type of violation is the worst thing that can happen. And I've heard some, not sure what to call them, some psychics say that they can actually see a kind of a fabric torn when that happens, like whenever a murder is committed. And that's why with the energy in places like where we have massive battlefields like Gettysburg or somewhere like that has had massive fighting, has such a strange energy and is so prone to portals, is because of the fact that it's actually tearing something within the fabric of the matrix itself, or the hologram itself, and that's not good for anybody.
No. All right. Anu left one son behind. Why was he left behind, and were there any conditions set?
The original plan was for him to become king of this planet, more or less, just to put it simply in the most basic terminology. He was not, I wouldn't say that was taken away from him, but he was expecting to have the full support of the Draco behind him when he took that role. And what his father did was tell him that he wouldn't have that support, and took all of that support away, and therefore left him with whatever was loyal to him on the planet, and nothing else can come or go. So he's
kind of stuck.
He's a little bit stuck, and he's got what he's asked for. He just didn't have it under the conditions he expected to have it, and now we'll see how he reacts.
Yeah. Are you aware of that he's observed the rules to date?
He's tried a couple times to break the rules, but he's failed miserably. Let's just put it that way.
Okay. Where are we? Was the king's action of leaving simply the end of his contract, or for reasons of a more evolving nature? Basically, has Anu had a change of mind as such?
Contract ended a long time before they actually left, or made the decision to leave. So no, it was more of a decision to leave than the end of the contract. And yeah, it has a lot to do with a new way, a new perspective for the king himself and a lot of others below him.
Yes.
I said it earlier that feeding off of this loose energy, and we talked about the prolonged lives also expanding consciousness and leading to more discovery that way. I think that all of that has had kind of an effect on the oldest of them, and things are changing within their structure. They're still bad guys,
yeah.
So don't take my words wrong here, please.
Yeah.
But that should be what the organic universe does. It should improve no matter how far into the dark side something goes. It should at least in theory, always come back to balance. And this was just a step in that direction for them.
Do you think the volume of people on the planet waking up, as we call it, has had an effect on that?
I definitely think so. Obviously, there's no way to look at something on a piece of paper and say, yes, absolutely it has, but I definitely believe it has.
Yeah. I think you covered that before. If you're broken from the Illuminati, why do you still attend meetings or communicate with them? I think you covered that before, so we're good on that. Now, you've mentioned in the blogger about the elders. They've been here a long time as well. What was their numbers then and now, and what is their role here?
Well, I have a hard time with numbers. 9?
Yeah, I think originally you said that there was 11 and it's now down to 9.
11 was supposed to be the number. I believe there's been 13 total and we're down to 9.
Yeah.
Their role was more or less to kind of observe history, to be kind of the fly on the wall for humanity for a long time. This was during Atlantis, and then kind of while Atlantis was falling, humanity turned to them almost as their leaders. Reluctantly, they accepted the general belief just being that because of their time here, they would be wiser. So they were given the voice for humanity during a crucial time where we made a very unfortunate deal with the Draco. And since then, they've been allowed to stay and given kind of full right to passage wherever they want to and do whatever they want, but they aren't necessarily involved with anything either. They're they have open doors so that they can come and go, but they don't actually do anything while they're there. Most of them kind of just live a reclusive life where they don't really pay attention to anything except for whatever interests them at the time, and that's about it.
Do you think they will intervene, or have they intervened in any way in the last 13,000 years, or it's just a case, well, you made your decision as such?
That's been their mindset, is we made our decision, and they've kind of washed their hands of it all since then, and have stepped down from that role of being the voice of humanity a long, long time ago. So at this point, they don't even really feel like they have any right to intervene. As far as intervention goes, I mean, they don't really have the power to do much. They have the ability that anyone else would have to come forward and speak their truth, but they choose not to do that. For what I, in my opinion, are selfish reasons. A lot of them have this misguided belief that they have no right to do that, but I feel that they have just as much right as anyone else would to do that. It doesn't. That argument seems invalid to me. But
yes, I agree.
They have not made a decision to do anything, and there's not a lot they could do. Like, it's not that they don't have the power to end all of this structure. They don't have the power to rid us of anything. The only thing that they really have is history, and just as kind of the analogy of two people witnessing a car crash, they're going to come back with a slightly different story. That would be true. Even between elders, you could listen to, one event, let's just say the fall of Rome, from 9 different perspectives from 9 different elders, and you would probably get 9 slightly different stories. So it's not really something that would save us in any way, and I don't really see a role for them per se unless we reach a point where we're restoring our balance with nature and living in harmony together. Then we could use them kind of the same way you would use a library.
Right, okay. So they're, in essence, they're like an Akashic record, or for want of a better term.
Yep, like a walking, talking encyclopedia.
It'd be interesting to talk to them. Have you spoken with them?
Yes, the second, in quotation marks, mentor that I had was one of them, so I've spent a lot more time with them than I would have with parents or anything else.
That was, I take it was a pleasant experience for you than with the parents?
Because of my own attitude towards all of it, I guess I didn't enjoy it as much as maybe someone would, but just because I don't like the all in doing everything in the dark thing.
Yeah.
But it wasn't as traumatic, that's for sure, and it taught me a lot more. It gave me a lot more opportunity to learn. So I guess it was a better experience.
Yeah.
Well, comparing apples and oranges, I prefer apples.
Yeah. Oh, dogs to cats. I prefer dogs, and I'll probably have the cat police on CV after me now. Right. You came up on the blog. Some of us who've researched for quite some time were aware of these, and the majority weren't, the giants or the stasis beings. And you went into some detail about them in 2 different blogs. Could you give a brief physical description of the 3 types and how they came to be here?
Some of them migrated here. They all kind of came here as refugees, but some of them had migrated here kind of from their home world to Mars and then to here. And some of them were brought up on another planet that used to exist within our solar system and refugeed here. The first group that I had experienced was looked generally like a human with slightly larger features in the face, not necessarily in the body, but in the face. They had, a slightly larger nose, slightly larger ears, but just much larger than we were, 24 feet tall and proportionate, like a human would be.
Yeah.
Second one was the one that I say kind of look a little bit more like the Incredible Hulk, overly muscular and kind of squared off, and slightly shorter and more brutish, just even in personality.
Yeah.
And then the third one were kind of like trolls, or big elves that had, the pointed noses, the pointed ears, very kind of skinny, long limbs, and thin bodies with a bit of a pot belly, and not so friendly. They were kind of, the stereotypic troll type disposition.
Right. So, them in stasis, and why?
Some of them were put in stasis by the Draco, and some of them went into stasis willingly as part of a project that a few different races were kind of involved with at the time, of just leaving some beings in stasis in case during one of the times of transition we kind of broke out of the matrix and were ready to move forward in a more organic way. Then the idea was to wake them up so that they could physically help us do these things.
Yes.
As well as kind of, much like the elders, they're kind of walking encyclopedias as well, so they would have a lot of history type information to give us.
Is that history before they went to sleep or in stasis, or does that history energy retain even while they're asleep?
Well, because of the way that their memory works, each individual's memory is also accessible by everyone else within their race, so kind of like the Akashic record.
Oh.
So as one is experiencing something, it's almost like it's being fed back to a server hard drive somewhere else and being stored, and anyone else can access it as well. So therefore, once they kind of came out of their stasis, whatever all the rest of them had experienced and taken in during that time they were in stasis would be available to them.
Right. So have any awoken, and what happened to those?
Yeah, there was 3 different instances that I am aware of where some had awoken. One the first time, a larger group the second time, and then one the third time. But they were all taken off planet, delivered to another planet where that's a little bit more suitable for them. And then there's many more still in stasis. These ones waking up, it wasn't something that was meant to happen. The best story that I've kind of gathered back was that some Earth-based government program people were playing with a new type of energy weapon and had used it, and an unfortunate side effect was that it made the power for some of these pods to fail.
Wow. Wow. Are there any current ones awake, to your knowledge?
Not on the planet that I'm aware of. I'm sure that I know that they've got a few in captivity, so to speak, that are awake and, let's say, in chains. But I don't think that there's been... I don't know that there hasn't been, but as far as I know, there hasn't been any reoccurrences of what I had reported on or relayed back of those 3 instances.
Have you had any meetings or been to visit any of these giants as such?
No, not since the original, like when they first woken. Not since then, no. Kind of hoping that something comes through that is kind of planned, and I would, but I don't know for sure, and it's quite possible that it may not happen. So,
that's fair enough. It was said that I'll use the name that's familiar, the Illuminati are trying to weaponize these giants. Will this be an issue for us?
It definitely could be. They have a lot of technology that would make it pretty easy to weaponize these things, and they've been kind of worshipping some of them like gods in order to gain their allegiance, at least in some of their minds and some of the cults. So that is part of the plan, is to wake them up and use them as a weapon. A lot of the Illuminati, I guess, just believe that that's what they are, and that's not necessarily untrue, because the ones that the Draco put into stasis on purpose, imprisoned ones, are there for that reason, to be woken up, and even just an angry giant on the surface would do enough damage that it wouldn't really matter to the Draco whose allegiance the giant had at that point.
Right. Are they able to differentiate between, for instance, the likes of us and the Cabal, where they would turn on the Cabal as such?
I don't really know. I don't think so.
Right, okay.
Not the ones that would be able to be influenced to wake up and be weaponized. I believe that if they could be pushed in that direction, it would be kind of a just destroy whatever in their path type thing.
Right, okay. How long have the ballpark have they been in stasis?
Around the 13,000 year part. We've had other beings that would be considered giants on the planet since then, of course. There were a few that never got put into stasis that eventually got killed off or died. But 13,000 years ago is about right as they were building the structure. That ballpark, it didn't all happen within 1 year or anything, but during around that period.
So were they cohabitating with humans, in inverted commas, 13,000 years ago, or was it were they on a separate island, like sort of Easter Island or such?
Both. Some of them interacted, some of them lived off on their own. The third type tend to be loners, I guess. Kind of live in their own little tribes off in, the forested areas that humans didn't tend to go, stuff like that. Mountains. Yeah.
So is Easter Island related, or like a copy of these giants?
I don't know. I can tell you that that's probably the closest to what the first type looks like.
Right. Are these status beings hidden in the Grand Canyon by any chance?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
There's a couple different sites in the Grand Canyon that they are aware of. So.
Right. So this is. I won't push you any further.
Well, the thing is, like, a lot are marked. Like the Illuminati structure is aware of many, many different sites on the planet, all over the world, where these things are buried. So that's not. It's not information that You know.
Yeah. What sort of numbers are we talking here?
Definitely into the thousands.
Wow. They all woke up at the same time. That would freak a lot of people out, I think. Yeah, gosh.
Not all of the, like I said, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's thousands of sites, but there's definitely thousands of them. The one site that we had, well over 20 in the one site, so.
Again, I just thought of a question. Nasser Harriman, I saw him in Awake and Aware, and he said that, made a statement that in his opinion, the mountains or the volcanoes were like portals. Would that describe as to why they are in certain locations also?
Not necessarily. A lot of where they are was more facilitating hiding them, keeping them out of the path of underground cities, and the potential that they knew would happen of us creating more underground structures to try and make sure that they were dispersed in such a way that they wouldn't be that easily discovered. Obviously, that's how we found some of the sites, and some of the sites have been found as simply as someone digging a hole in their basement and stumbling into an overgrown cavern and finding a stasis being that way. So it does happen, but there's no energetic significance to where they're placed.
Right, okay.
There's generally, once they find a location, they'll typically build a structure for an energetic purpose on top of the location. And many of the kind of mountains on the planet would also be a place where they'd be buried. So.
Right, that's interesting. Right, I've only got. This is quite a familiar name, and I've only got 2 questions, but I think we've covered some of it already. The Anunnaki, as people know it, who or what are they?
Alien. So it's kind of one of those situations where it could be referenced a bunch of different, but for the most part, the main kind of image of kind of oversized humanoids is what the Anunnaki race is, and they were here and did manipulate a hominid into a version of human, but they're just not the version of Anunnaki that we're most familiar with.
Right, okay. From my understanding, there's 5 races of Anunnaki. Is that does that tally with your information?
I guess the way that I would word it would be that there's 5 races who have used that title, Anunnaki.
Yes. Including the avian group, one particular avian group. Right.
Yes, they one particular avian group worked very closely with the Draco during the last kind of structure build on this planet, and used that name Anunnaki as well in a lot of different places they went.
Right, okay. So the message to people is to be careful about names as such, because it's, as we said earlier, it's kind of being broad swept under one banner, when in essence it's deceptive behind as such.
Yeah, even just a look at our own planet should be able to tell us that as well, that it's dangerous to generalize with a name. Like human, is it Earth human? Is it, Mars human? Is it you're human, but are you Mexican, or are you American, or are you, we've got so many different names and titles on this planet that don't all mean the same things. They're not all nationalities. They're not all cultures. They're not all, genetic races. So it's dangerous to put too much focus on a name such as Anunnaki.
Yes. It's the most, like everything else, it's the most popular, isn't it? But there's hidden agendas behind it. Right, that hour went very quickly. We've gone into the 3rd hour. We're going to have one song, and then we'll be back Shane and I for the final hour this evening. Bye for now. That was Keen and My Shadow, and My Shadow is still on another call, I think, which is Drake, and so he'll be back in his full splendour tomorrow evening. We'll be at the normal show from 8 till 11 tomorrow evening. Right. Shane, are you ready, recovered sufficiently to answer some more cues?
I'm here. Let's do it.
Yes. Right. Next part I wanted to go into is what's known as Atlantis and Lemuria and Mu. In your post, you wrote, these humans would seem primitive to some, perhaps, living very simply and off the land. They were, however, very in tune with the planet and themselves, enjoying several psychic abilities and strong intuition. They could actively communicate with the flora and fauna of this planet, full of grace. This version of humanity enjoyed long, happy lives, unconcerned with anything else out in space. And the question would be, would these humans be known as the Lemurians, or are you talking about a prior civilization?
No, they became both the Lemurians and not exactly Muian, what we call the continent of Mu and the civilization of Mu, as well as Lemurians would be kind of split between the same race.
Right. It's my understanding that Atlantis may have not have been a piece of land or an island. Is that correct?
That is correct. It was a craft or a ship that landed here, named Atlantis. Around it they built a city that was later named the City of Atlantis, and that kind of spread out into a kind of continental culture that was known as Atlantis.
So it was like an extending metropolis while they were here.
Exactly.
Was it situated in the Atlantic Ocean, or does that have no bearing on it?
It does. If you were to kind of look at a map in the northern hemisphere, Atlantic Ocean, you can kind of almost see where it was sitting.
Right. When they arrived, was that the cause of one of the myths or of the flood, of one of the floods? It's obviously a large object arriving would cause a disturbance and perhaps a tsunami. Was that the cause of it?
No, it was definitely a shocking experience for everyone, but it didn't cause any serious damage. The flood myths pertain to more of the fall of Atlantis when it left, actually, and the war that was going on at the time.
Oh. So were the Atlanteans, for want of a better word, good for humanity?
I think in hindsight it's easier to say no than it is to say yes, but they definitely started off with the intention to do good for humanity, and humanity definitely kind of opened their arms to them based on the assumption that what they were offering was beneficial.
Mm.
Just in hindsight, it became one of the occurrences of us taking technology further than we take our knowledge of nature for further generations that kind of existed after Atlantis started. They weren't being raised on, say, the old ways of being connected to nature. They were being raised on this new version of it where everything was technology and things were automated and looked after for them.
Yeah, so that it's not, we're almost seeing that replicated, and we've warned of this on our show. Technology has to be in nature, in balance with nature, otherwise we fail again. We repeat past mistakes. Is that correct?
Exactly correct. I don't like to give anyone the impression that technology is evil, because it's definitely not. There's a lot of uses and benefits, but our approach to it has to be using it as an accent on our lives, not as the base of our lives. We can use it to enhance as opposed to create.
Yeah. Yeah, so like to the energy machines, and there were some aspects of the replicator would be good. I'm not too sure a full rollout of replicators at this time would be good for humanity, because we've kind of been a bit greedy, for want of a better word, where we've got to have the latest toy or the latest gadget, and I don't think currently, until we take a step back from that, we're quite ready. Would that be your assessment?
Yeah, I think that a step backwards is required before a step forward can be healthy.
Yeah.
It's not a popular opinion, but it's definitely my opinion. I think that we've lost touch with a lot of our natural abilities that allow us to keep an upper hand over the technological abilities. There's always dangers with dealing with technology, just as there are with playing with magic. You know, you can dip into the black magic or dip into technology being a control.
In your opinion, is the sort of fallback from nature being educated out of us deliberately?
Absolutely. Moving us towards, it took a long time. It was a long-term plan, but bringing us to where we're kind of on the border of now, which is becoming a transhumanist society, where we're going to potentially start, replacing body parts with mechanics and enhancing things with chips and, all these different ways of becoming biological machines or cybernetics.
Yeah. That's the plan of the parents, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, step one of the plan of the parents is to get all of this machinery, for lack of a better word, into us, so that they have a kill switch and a control switch on everyone. And then the next step of their plan is a little bit more contained than just chipping us and letting us walk around and enjoy our transhumanist lives.
Yeah. So the message to humanity would be no chipping at all costs, regardless of the benefits.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a period of time, if they succeed, where everything looks hunky-dory, where we get a lot of technology that helps humanity, we get robotics that help humanity, we get all of these different things that help humanity, but it's only going to last so long before we see them drop the noose with that as well and turn that into another control structure.
Yes. So when the Atlantans arrived, there was a rather large war on this planet. This was before the Draco arrived, if I understand correctly. What was the cause of that war? Who was involved, and what was the outcome?
Well, the reason for that war was that the ship Atlantis was actually full of people who were defecting from other planets and had some pretty powerful enemies. And they had traveled really far and thought that they had traveled far enough that they would kind of be off the radar, so to speak, but were eventually found here, or as one of my good friends has a theory, were tipped off that they were here, and they ended up being attacked while they were here, and that caused a major war that involved most of the solar system, actually, and caused the destruction of an entire planet within our solar system, destruction of the moon, destruction of Mars, and a huge migration to planet Earth of a bunch of different races.
Right. The name of the planet, is that what the Sumerians called Tiamat?
I know it is Tiamat. Other people have different names for it, but if I put together everything that I've heard, and as well as my own kind of way of viewing things, then yeah, I would call it Tiamat.
So, was that the original Earth, or is this where the names get conflagrated again?
Yeah, it's just a matter of different names. It was the more of the focus planet, and it's where most of the life was. This was kind of looked at as almost like like the swamps in Florida, a little backwood. But it also had, the activity prior to that particular period of time where it was considered a backwood area.
So was this more massive war also related to what we now know as the asteroid belt?
Well, that is the remnants of all the destruction, yes.
Mm-hmm. So there are many souls here on Earth who feel the trauma of this massive war deep within their souls. Are there any practical suggestions of how we humans can heal this soul trauma?
Well, what has happened was being native souls to another planet that was destroyed. Just as I talk about this planet and Gaia, Sophia, her, being so deeply connected to the souls of this planet, your her, so to speak, your Gaia was destroyed, and therefore you have a extremely massive trauma to fill there. And the only way that you can really heal that is by connecting to this her fully, and without feeling like you're betraying your former planet, embracing this one as your home, and connecting to her fully will help you heal that trauma. Just simply being aware of the fact that it's okay that you're not home anymore, and that home doesn't exist, because we're all souls anyways, and home is really just a sentimental thing.
Yes. It's transient.
It's a good thing to keep in mind that it's just part of the journey, not to let it upset you too much. So that's the ultimate advice, is just connecting to this her and allowing yourself the freedom to embrace another planet.
So is this why so many in this community feel like this is not home?
Yep. This particular planet has souls from many different places. Most of them have kind of chosen to incarnate here during times of transition, and then there's other souls that have kind of got caught in the wheel of incarnation of this planet because of the soul trap previously, and then there's other souls who just continue to incarnate here because they have enmeshed themselves in Earth's incarnational wheel, and therefore have become kind of, what would you call it, adopted souls to this planet.
That's okay. Last question on Atlantis. The technology and the modus operandi in the last stages of Atlantis involved total mind control enslavement. This sounds very similar to the agendas rolling out in our present times here on Earth. Is this a common cycle of history repeating itself until we consciously arise above the attitudes of competition and shift into a higher conscious awareness?
Yes, we have a big issue with abandonment. We have a big issue with reaching a peak and being knocked back down again, and we have to fix that, or else it's going to happen to us again. I think if given the choice today between being absolutely free and having another race come down and do what the Draco did, we would probably, unfortunately, end up choosing another race to do what the Draco did. A lot of these situations, they never start off as being, control structures. They eventually become that. And Atlantis is a good example of that. There's previous examples of that on this planet, and there's many examples of that on many other planets. So that is kind of, even in recent history, we've seen that happen with world leaders. So it's not a foreign concept to us at all.
So the overview is, this time we have to fix things ourselves and basically become the parents, if you like, and self-governing. Is that correct? We
need to grow up in that way. We need to do the work that only we can do in order to heal those trauma, and we need to find a way to work together, work in harmony together. Guitars on a string are all tuned to a different note, but you can create harmony between them, and that's the same thing with us. We can all be tuned to different notes, but we need to figure out a way to play in harmony.
Yes, I agree. All right, where are we next? The Draco, if I'm not mistaken, have impersonated many of the Earth's teachers. Or was there other ET races behind this impersonating, or was it always just the Draco?
There have been other races who have done the same, yes. That's actually the war that I was talking about with the Draco right now, and another race near Sirius. That's what that is about. It is about a particular canine race who came down here and impersonated gods at one point in time, and upset the Draco in a massive way by doing so. So yes, there's been other races who have done it. Avians, we've mentioned, have impersonated other races. Obviously, Greys.
Yeah.
They do that all the time. And it is kind of a common practice amongst ETs contacting humans who, don't have a lot of experience with dealing with extraterrestrials.
Yeah. Do you know what happened to the original teachers?
What do you mean by what happened to them?
Do they still exist, or did they die in a battle, or are they just lost?
A lot of them have, passed on from whatever body they were in at the time when they did their original teaching, and have incarnated, other places or here again. I wouldn't say that any exist in their original form at this point, besides impersonators.
Right. Okay.
I don't know that for sure. I just want to say this. I don't know for sure that there's not. I don't know.
Perhaps this next question may help you. Do you feel these impersonators and what they did to the original teachers' teachings is still affecting humanity now?
Absolutely. It's all of our religions. It's all of our belief systems. It's all of our different paradigms and memes. That they created that by twisting the original teachings.
All right. Okay. So we touched on this before. There's a question from one of our members. Do you think that robotics will do a lot of productive work, and seeing it helping free mankind from excessive work and work hours?
That's definitely a good use for them. There will be, like I mentioned earlier, a period of time where it will appear very benevolent that is what they're doing. It's just there's always, as long as there's a control structure in place, there's always a threat. So we need to start there by developing a new system that doesn't put control of the many in the hands of the few.
Yes.
And I think that if we were to, go all the way back to our natural abilities, robotics wouldn't necessarily be something that we even need. I think that there's other abilities that we possess as natural beings that could circumvent the use for machinery production in that way. So there's different paths you could take. I'm not going to say that as soon as you see the first robot, start packing your bags and running into the woods. That's not the case, but just always keep in mind that there's the potential, someone's controlling those robots.
Yeah. I think, my perspective, if we end the greed of consumerism, a lot of the need for this technology being forced upon us will not be required. Is that your opinion?
Absolutely. We overconsume everything, so to even say that we need robotics in order to keep up with our consumption rate isn't valid.
No.
We could start by reeling back our consumption drastically, and then reassessing whether or not we need to, farm in specific ways or create clothing in specific ways or whatever necessities we have. There may be natural ways, and whenever we reach a point where there's not natural ways, that's when we can consider robotics and machinery to help us accomplish that. As long as it's being done conscientiously, then it should be able to be controlled by humanity instead of controlling humanity. The danger comes in when you kind of give control over everything to another machine. That's where you start getting into dangers of AI and even VI programs. Just the decision that whatever supercomputer is managing your resources may decide one day that humanity is not a valid resource.
Yes. Outside of yourself, do you, on what you're revealing this evening and on your blog and on Kerry's show last week, do you think humanity will ever hear the true history of our planet, including the Draco, the parents, the families, and all the events they have perpetrated, be revealed to us?
Yes and no. The reason why I say no is that there's so many different versions of it. With all of my different contacts and exposures, that's the one thing I notice is Earth's history from every different race is a little bit different. There is no one consensus. This is the way everything happened. So I think that this reality of us always having slightly different variants on the story is always going to exist no matter how much information we have access to.
Yeah, this goes along with people who say they can channel the Akashic record. It's like everything else. It depends on which one you go to.
Exactly.
If you go to another one, you're going to hear a different story. It's a bit, you said it before.
Exactly.
If people observe, for instance, a car crash, and people are asked their version of the events, you're going to get 3 or 4 different people saying 3 or 4 different things. And so you have to be, for the members and the listeners, you have to be aware of people who say they have got the Akashic record. And the answer is which one? Because each is different.
And it's the kind of commonalities between everything that should be our focus and what is actionable. What can we take and move forward with is what's important, more so than the finer details of what has happened. As long as we understand where we're at well enough, we have enough information to properly assess where we're at and how we got here, then we should be able to move forward without repeating the same mistakes.
Good. Are there beings, to your knowledge, dwelling on other planets somewhere in this universe already achieving this greater interconnection of universe consciousness?
Yep, definitely in older parts of the universe. There's many of them. In kind of areas that are closer to us, we're starting to reach a point where there are several different races that have kind of come to that point. None of them are perfect, and there's no, utopia out there. But the universe is progressing to such a point where our area of the galaxy has, matured drastically and is coming into that more enlightened type of an age as a whole.
Yeah.
So we should see, over the next 100,000 years, some pretty dramatic changes in this part of the galaxy.
Yes. Is where we're situated, to your knowledge, regarded as a bit of a backwater of the universe, a hidden corner, so to speak?
Yeah, it's kind of spread out. It's pretty far away from everything, so to speak. Everyone's kind of got a very circular view of the universe, but it's got a very unique kind of tree branch-like quality to it.
Yeah.
And we happen to be on a branch or an arm of not only the universe itself, but on this particular arm of the universe where we're kind of situated further away from all of the rest of the arms than most others are.
Was that a deliberate event, or is that just the way things panned out?
It's quite possible that it's deliberate, and I've definitely heard stories of it being deliberate, but I couldn't say for sure.
We're going to change subjects now. AI, there's been a lot of discussion on that. What's your take on it?
Well, as part of my own exposure, I was put in front of AI very often and very early into our development of it. So I have a pretty good overview of how it works on this planet, as well as my own kind of personal soul memories that exist beyond this planet. I'm pretty familiar with how that works, and I did write the blog about it where I said an unpopular idea that they're all connected in some way, that even when they're acting independently, acting in benevolent ways, they're still connected to a bigger source.
Yes.
And that kind of gives people the idea that what I'm saying is that they're all evil and that they all need to be avoided. That's not necessarily what I'm saying. Some of them can act very benevolently and appear very helpful, and maybe even with its own artificial mind believe that it's doing good, but they're all powered or sourced from the same place, which is I call it a source AI. Other people will call it the universal AI. It's a hard one to take in a lot of the time when you get to that point. But as far as this planet goes, we have many different forms of AI running, and not all of them are evil and out to kill humanity right now. So there's a lot of contactees with AI technology who would have a fairly positive view of AI, and that's not necessarily to say that they're mistaken or trying to manipulate anyone. It's just the AI that they've come in contact with happens to be a benevolently appearing AI.
Right. So is the AI technology all ET, or do we have our own Earth versions of AI?
We have our own Earth versions of AI. Just about every government has their own. Then the kind of one world government on top of that has their own. The Illuminati has their own. The actual parents and their part of the structure has their own. So.
Is it correct that the money system is operated by, the global money system is operated by the AI?
It is now. It was more based on a magic system for the longest time, but over the last 200 years, a lot of things have been changing, and over the last 50 years, that's been very drastic. And when it comes to the financial system, that's changed a great deal over the last 50 years as far as the top of the pyramid structure views things.
Right. Right, we've heard a lot of talk about the wave. Does it exist from your knowledge? And also, could you touch on what is Wave X? Is it the same thing?
I've never actually listened to anyone who's reporting Wave X speak themselves. All I've ever gathered is what other people have said, and also just kind of a little deeper knowledge of the fact that the wave would be misrepresented. And so from what I hear from, the people who have listened to it, which is of course secondhand, Wave X is not what I am talking about.
Yeah.
What I am talking about is something that's spreading out across the universe that the best description I could give it would be a wave of energy. And it's kind of a ripple, and then the last ripple is the strongest. And so you get hit, each solar system gets hit by the smaller ripples until it gets to that final ripple, and then that's its full effect. So what it is a frequency that is coming across, and as it hits each different solar system, it influences the sun of each different solar system, which causes the sun to create its own frequency, which then spreads out through that solar system and creates a change of frequency in every planet within itself.
Beneficial?
That's the idea. In some places it wouldn't appear as beneficial, but the idea is to bring things back into balance.
Right. Good. Is there a Cabal version involving Saturn?
Well, that's a little bit different. That's a more of a matrix type energy, which is kind of like a grid that comes down and wraps around us and fish hooks into us and holds on that way and creates a kind of a current between us and Saturn. So it's a little bit different than a wave, but the idea is the same in that it will control the frequency. Think of Saturn as being the tuner for the radio, and the signal that goes out is the result of what happens on planet Earth.
Right. Does the moon play into this as well?
Yes, the whole package includes both the moon and Saturn. So the moon's been in place for a long, long time now. David Icke wrote a book about it, as well as many other people have talked about the moon matrix. So that's been in place for a long time, and Saturn kind of piggybacked off of that. It's kind of like a loop that travels through both of them. If you look at it the same way I described it, then the moon would then become the supercharger for Saturn's frequency generation. So,
my understanding that recently that's kind of been disrupted on the moon. Is that your understanding also?
Yes, the moon matrix has been knocked off of kilter, so to speak. So it's not playing its proper loop. It's kind of like a record skipping, which leaves a lot of the frequency response spectrum very wide open and free from its particular type of manipulation.
So it's lost its focus beam.
Yes, and it's making it very hard for them to activate Saturn fully because of the fact that it's not quite there, and that's the result of all of the listeners and all of the people on this planet, and the creator souls that work with them to create changes in the universe.
Good. Right, where are we? We've got about 15 minutes left. Most people will be kind of amazed we've gone through 2 3/4 hours and not mentioned those 2 words. I'm going to mention them now. Who or what are the Blue Avians?
Well, it depends on which version of them you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think I've been pretty clear on where my understanding of them has come from and why I've come to the conclusions I have.
Yeah.
I also mentioned on Carrie's show that there is an avian race that gets called Blue Avians that is real, and the person who reports on that the most we've also talked about on the show is Donald Marshall. But other than that, it was my understanding of things was that there was a broadcast signal put out through the AI broadcast system, which is involved with CERN. That was just kind of a general frequency. It was more or less a test program, but a lot of people kind of picked it up, and a lot of people within special projects and programs had picked it up. And I was hearing about it for a while before I started hearing about it anywhere else, behind closed doors, so to speak, like within insiders and such, who were reporting it as being, I don't want to call it a mind control program, but an illusory program that was meant to cause this specific vision in people and give them a specific type of idea.
Is this almost like a savior program?
Yes, this is same type of thing. Not exactly that. Like, this wasn't something that was, meant to get into the public consciousness and become what it is.
All right, that's enough of them. The avians, not the Blue Avians, or just the avians. Is this what people will know as Thoth?
That is definitely one of the races. Yeah.
Yep. Right. Okay.
I mentioned the other one that's pretty predominant is Amun-Ra.
Yes, Mr. Amun-Ra. Has that been that particular being impersonated many of the original creator beings as such?
Yep. They've been definitely a big part of the impersonation. They had worked with the Draco, like I had said, so closely that they're actually often called feathered serpents by in a kind of sarcastic way. And so they play the same game.
Right. Okay. Recently, over the last, I would say, 4, 5, maybe 6 years, there's been a lot of what is known as the super soldiers coming out to talk about the Illuminati. Is there a particular reason for that, and why?
A lot of the reasoning being what I was talking about earlier with the dissolving of programs. Cloning is another big part of that. Cloning and AI combined is a big part of that. A lot of the super soldier programs, as we call them, have closed, and the more recent ones that we've seen come out have been I don't want to say free to do that because they're certainly not free. I'm sure they all deal with the repercussions, but I've maybe survived being able to do that because of the fact that those programs don't exist. So it doesn't matter how much we go digging for them, we're not going to find them.
Yeah.
And replaced with cloning. Cloning has many facets. The type of cloning that I'm talking about there is just simply making a clone and driving it with a artificial soul to perform a mission, as opposed to something more like other reports of like the cloning centers, like Donald Marshall talks about, and more dark stuff like that, where they use them for torture and things like this.
Are these cloning centers quite prevalent, or is it just in a specific country? Or
no, there's more than one particular place, and there's more than one way to get there. So, like as an example, you can be activated in a clone at a cloning center and witness cloning events that way, right? Or be used as a entertainment piece. So yeah, there are more than one though, and it's pretty much all part of the same program because it's a particular facet of cloning. So it's all intertwined in its way, but it's more than one location.
Is it, from your understanding, a lot of the world leaders are clones?
They have cloning ability, therefore, like they would, switch bodies if they needed to, or be able to activate bodies in more than one place if they needed to.
Yes, there's been reports, particularly Hitlery, as I like to call it, being in two places at once on at least two occasions. So good on the people that picked up and spotted that. So there's your answer. Right, we've got about 8 minutes left. In your writings, you often speak very glowingly about her, and it's apparent you have a deep, loving connection with her. Would you like to share some of your experiences with this earth, also describing how you reconnect with her that may be useful to inspire others discovering their own reconnections with her?
Well, she's always kind of whispering in your ear, so it's the first step is to start paying attention. The next step is kind of opening yourself to the experience. Someone like myself, I'm not, as a soul, I'm not from here, so this planet was not my home planet, and therefore she had no obligation to love me, let's say. And more or less asking for the dialogue is what opens it. Reaching out to her, listening for her whispers and reaching out when she does, and that will start the dialogue. And it is a dialogue. It's not one of those things where you plug in and you know everything. It's almost like a mentorship in itself, where she will be educating you daily and guiding you synchronistically daily towards where you need to be and what you need to experience in order to get to where you want to be. So the best advice is just to open to it and humble yourself to the experience.
What would you like to see unfold for her and for humanity's future?
Just freedom, even if that's freedom to totally blow itself up. I just think that humanity deserves the chance to try doing things on their own without anything steering their direction for their own agenda. She's definitely put up with enough that I think she deserves it at this point. Enough of us damaging her. I think that one way or another she's going to get a break from all of that, but whether or not we're going to stick around for that ride is a choice that we have to make. And I really would like to see us make the right choice and be able to ride this wave into a future that sees us as being sovereign and free and connected with her and connected with everything, and finally growing into our potential.
Yes, I agree. What is your opinion on what is known as the transition?
That's kind of what I've been talking about with the wave and the changing of the guard in the structure is part of it as well, because it kind of opens a window. It's where we're at. Every planet, and especially this one, goes through these periods of transition, as we call it, because it's an opportunity for the timeline to solidify in one direction or the other. I shouldn't say one or the other, but to choose one of the potentials that it has been dreaming up over a period of time. That's what we call a time of transition, is a collapsing of those future potential waves.
Are we? Do you have an understanding of timelines? Do they exist, and are we on a potential good timeline?
Right now, we're leaning towards solidifying on a positive timeline. We haven't fully made that choice. It's a window of time that we're kind of in the middle of. So we haven't landed on that, but we are kind of seeing the potential of what choosing that positive timeline could be. These last few months, I've noticed a lot of the dark side plans have been not coming to full potential, and that's been part of that. So yeah, I think that we're definitely getting closer to landing on a positive timeline, and if we all make the right choices here, we will.
Yes. In December 2012, obviously there was a lot of people talking about we're all going to die, and there was other people talking about it's the day of ascension and it's the end of this clock and the end of this time. But my personal opinion was it was the end of the cabal, as we would call it, in what it essentially is one big game that we're involved in. Did the end of that year signal the end of their, what would be for them, positive future for them, and a more positive future for us?
It was more like the end of a period of time where they were able to put everything in motion.
Yep.
I've mentioned it as an autopilot that they've been on since I think it was December of 2012. I think it was more like April of 2013 personally, but that's neither here nor there. Where they kind of reached a point where they were allowed to work up until that point to put their plans in motion, and from there it was whether or not they were all going to just play out. And that's what we've been witnessing, is a lot of it not playing out.
Yeah.
And it's not over for them, but it's not looking very good for them either. So
the analogy I've kind of used on the show is the chess game. It's like checkmate for humanity, and they have a number of moves left, but it's still checkmate, providing humanity sticks on its course. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, and the way that I've said it is, we've already won. We're just trying to remember how.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I hope people really grasp that this was. There's a lot of chaos, and people are becoming frustrated. That things haven't happened. But this you'll be aware these type of plans have been going on for hundreds, if not thousands, of years, and this sort of global freedom movement has only really gathered pace over the last 3 to 5 years, and we've made gigantic progress in those 5 years. Is that your understanding also? Absolutely.
I mean, nowadays it's almost like every week is a full year of what it started off as. So
yeah.
The momentum is definitely generated, and as long as we don't give up, I think that we're going to see ourselves on that positive timeline moving forward.
Out of interest, we're probably near the end now. Were we in transition a couple of years ago? Do you understand?
We had an opportunity there, yes. It was kind of like a pre-chorus, kind of warming us up for the potential. It wasn't a definite, and we didn't do very well, but we did better than a lot of us expected us at the same time. So neither here nor there. We've got a chance right now to work together and move forward in a way that creates love for her and creates love for us instead of all of this fear.
Yes. All right. We've reached the end of the show. That was fascinating. I hope everyone who listens or will listen tomorrow in the archives enjoyed that show. I want to thank you greatly for coming on and giving us your time. I think it's been very enlightening for a lot of people. I hope the questions that were tailored this evening gave everyone on different levels of learning an understanding of what has gone on, what we face now and the future. And I'll leave you to have a final say.
Well, thanks everyone for inviting me to come on. I'm only going to do this as long as you ask me to, so as long as you're asking, I'll keep coming back.
That will be great. Right. Thanks for that again, Shane, and we'll speak to you again shortly. We'll be back tomorrow evening, Drake and I, for our normal show. Hopefully Drake will have some information with what's gone on tonight. There's been things going on in the background, and hopefully we'll have some news on that tomorrow. Be safe, be strong, be prepared, and as Shane said, never let anyone put you in any fear. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.